Prehistoric humans were making blades 500,000 years before Homo sapiens existed. Not crude chips, not lucky breaks, deliberately engineered cutting tools, produced by species we barely understand, using techniques so refined that modern researchers spent decades refusing to believe early humans were capable of them. Today we're going through 7 levels of primitive blades, from the first deliberate edge ever struck from stone, to cutting technology so sharp it still outperforms modern surgical steel. The real history of primitive blades is weirder, darker, and considerably more impressive than anyone gives prehistoric humans credit for. Let's get into it. Level 1. The Oldowan Flake. The Oldowan Flake is what happens when you strike one rock against another at the right angle and a sharp edge fractures free. The earliest examples date to 2.6 million years ago in Gona, Ethiopia. Not made by Homo sapiens. Not even by anything that closely resembled us. Homo habilis, a species with a brain 2/3 the size of yours, figured out that controlled impact could produce a cutting edge that bare hands and teeth couldn't match. This is the first documented moment in history where a living thing deliberately modified a natural object to create a tool it couldn't find in nature. Every blade that comes after, every knife, every scalpel, every razor, traces its conceptual lineage here. Use-wear analysis shows these flakes cut meat, scraped bone, and processed plant material. The edge angle hits between 7 and 10 degrees at its sharpest, finer than most modern utility knives. Not because early humans understood geometry, because fracturing rock produces physics that geometry describes. One rock, one strike, 2.5 million years of consequences. Level 2. The backed blade. A blade is useless if holding it cuts your hand before it cuts anything else. Backed blades solved this. One edge is worked sharp. The opposite edge is deliberately blunted, thickened by steep retouching or dulled against another stone. A cutting edge and a safe gripping edge in a single piece of stone. This sounds obvious. It took humans roughly 1 million years to think of it. Backed blades appear systematically around 70,000 years ago and spread rapidly, which tells you everything about how useful they actually were. The backed blade is the first evidence of intentional blade geometry, shaping not just for sharpness, but for how the tool interacts with the human hand. That's a cognitive step beyond sharp edge good. It's understanding the full system: hand, blade, material, outcome. The Blombos cave site in South Africa contains backed blades dated to 70,000 years ago, alongside ochre pigments and shell beads. The people making these blades were also decorating themselves and producing symbolic objects. The blade existed inside a culture. Level 3. The burin. Nobody talks about this one. It probably changed human survival more than any other cutting implement. A burin is a stone blade with a small, precisely angled chisel-like tip, produced by snapping the end at a controlled angle. The tip isn't for cutting, it's for engraving, gouging, and working bone, antler, and ivory, materials that stone blades can't efficiently process. And what did that unlock? The bone needle. Before the burin, fitted clothing was impossible. You could wrap animal hides around yourself, but couldn't stitch them into shapes that sealed out cold. The bone needle appears almost immediately after burins become widespread in the Upper Paleolithic, around 30,000 years ago. In glacial Europe, where temperatures drop to levels that kill an unprotected human in hours, fitted clothing isn't comfort. It's the difference between extinction and survival. The burin, an unglamorous little chisel tip of stone that most people have never heard of, is the tool that kept humans alive through the Ice Age. Level 4. The Clovis Point. 13,000 years ago, humans arrived in North America and encountered animals with no evolutionary fear response to the two-legged thing holding a stick. Mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, ancient horses, American lions. They needed something that could kill something enormous on the first attempt. A wounded mammoth that escapes is a dead hunting party. The Clovis Point is the answer. A large bifacially worked stone point with a fluted channel running up each face from the base. That flute isn't decoration, it's a hafting system. Thinning the base seats the point deeper into a split wooden foreshaft, binding more securely and creating a stronger attachment than any unhafted point. Experimental archaeologists today describe the fluting stage as the highest risk moment in stone tool production. One wrong strike and the entire point shatters. No recovery. Start over with new stone. The craftsmen doing this 13,000 years ago were working with no reference materials, no training manuals, no one who'd done it before on this continent. Clovis points appear across North and South America within a geological instant, spreading faster than almost any other prehistoric innovation on record, because it worked on everything it encountered. Level 5. The obsidian blade. Stop thinking about volcanic glass as a primitive material. An obsidian blade fractured correctly produces a cutting edge 3 nanometers thick. A standard razor blade measures between 300 and 600 nanometers. Obsidian is up to 500 times sharper, smooth and continuous under an electron microscope where steel is microscopically jagged. Obsidian doesn't cut tissue, it parts it at the cellular level. Some surgeons use obsidian scalpels today, not as novelty, as functional medical instruments, because the incision heals measurably faster and scars less than steel. The FDA hasn't approved them for standard use because of brittleness, but the cutting performance is not in question. Prehistoric cultures identified this property without electron microscopes, through pure observational trial and error. The Aztecs embedded obsidian shards into wooden clubs to create wounds modern battlefield surgeons describe as nearly impossible to treat cleanly. Cultures across Mesoamerica, the Pacific, and East Africa traded obsidian across vast distances because the advantage was worth it. The material is volcanic glass. The edge is a molecular boundary. Prehistoric humans found it in the earth and turned it into the sharpest cutting tool our species has ever produced, before or since. Level 6. The Solutrean laurel leaf. About 20,000 years ago, at the height of the last ice age, a culture in France and Spain produced something that still baffles researchers. Stone blades so thin, so large, and so perfectly symmetrical that they couldn't have been used for anything. The Solutrean laurel leaf reaches over 30 centimeters long and less than a centimeter thick. At those dimensions, it's physically too fragile to use. It shatters on first contact with bone. Some examples show zero use wear, made, kept, never used. Researchers believe the largest laurel leaves were status objects, proof of mastery. A flint knapper who could produce a blade that thin and symmetrical had demonstrated skill that commanded social standing. Some were made from rock crystal and colored jasper chosen for appearance alone. These people were making art from stone during an ice age. The technique is extraordinary even by modern standards. A flint core is heat-treated first, buried near a fire for days to reorganize its internal structure. Then, using only antler tine and bone pressure tools, the craftsman removes paper-thin flakes across the entire surface. One miscalculated strike anywhere destroys it. The largest examples represent days of work with catastrophic failure possible at every stage. Solutrean culture lasted around 3,000 years, then vanished. The laurel leaf went with it. No culture before or since produced anything comparable at that scale. Level 7. The pressure-flaked microblade. The final evolution isn't about bigger or sharper, it's about interchangeable. A microblade is a stone blade the length of a finger, produced through pressure flaking. Controlled force from a bone or antler tool rather than striking. When mastered, it produces blades so geometrically consistent they look manufactured. The Aztecs pressed microblades from obsidian cores using a chest crutch braced against the body for body weight-driven pressure. Hundreds of identical blades from a single core, each interchangeable with the next. Mount them as arrowheads, slot them into bone handles, embed them in wooden shafts as serrated edges. When one breaks, swap it out. The handle is permanent. The cutting component is replaceable. Microblade technology appears independently in Asia, the Americas, and Europe because the logic is universal. The insight that the valuable part is the system, not any individual blade, is a manufacturing philosophy that didn't resurface prominently until the Industrial Revolution 10,000 years later. From the first accidental edge struck by a species we barely recognize to modular blade systems with interchangeable components, that's 2.5 million years of humans refusing to accept that stone had limits. Which level hit you hardest? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into what prehistoric humans actually understood, subscribe and hit like. We're just getting started.